Welcome to your Houston Rewind for August 28th through September 1st. I'm KHOU 11 digital anchor Brandy Smith. We know catching up on the news can be a little overwhelming, especially in a city like Houston where it never seems to stop. So every weekend, we take this opportunity to fill you in on some of the stories you may have missed. Let's rewind. More than 300,000 students returned to campus on Monday in Houston and Cy-Fair ISDs. It was the first day back in school after the state took over HISD this summer, and Jason Miles found controversial decisions are still generating a lot of criticism for the district.
Like Houston ISD's other 270-plus campuses, the school at St. George Place is now under state control, something many families pray won't be too disruptive.
So far that I know is running smooth.
Hope it stays that way?
And I hope it stays that way, yes, 100%.
Overall, the school is good. They really control the kids in a good manner.
The most drastic changes are happening at so-called New Education System, or NES schools, including Wheatley High, where issues first triggered Texas Education Agency intervention.
Yeah, you know, they always say they want us to have a good education and stuff.
But student Nathaniel Martinez wonders about new protocols like the repurposing of libraries and keeping classroom doors open to supposedly encourage collaboration and improve teacher accountability.
I don't think having doors open would be good for us because, you know, you never know who's going to walk in.
Walking to and from school is the reality for many HISD students, and encouraging safety was again the focus of this annual event, started in the wake of middle schooler Josue Flores' 2016 murder, where school bus safety also came up.
Hey, when you see the school zone, slow down. When you see the school bus, stop.
Air 11 was over one of the district's transportation hubs this morning as some of more than 500 buses got going before dawn. The district sharing on social that with students enrolling every day, many routes will be added or changed in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It encourages families to use this Find My Route web tool to help keep up. As many celebrate being back in school.
And I'm officially upperclassman, so I'm so excited. Yeah.
Despite potential changes.
You can find a link to that Find My Route page and other resources on khou.com/education. A brutal assault, decades old, haunted a world-renowned sketch artist all these years. Lois Gibson sketched a suspect who was finally arrested. Marcelino Benito got her reaction in a story you'll see only on KHOU 11.
5,089 cases in my career.
Behind every sketch is a story.
The person that did this is sick.
And a victim that stays seared into Lois Gibson's mind.
If you talk to somebody that went through this, oh no, you won't forget that.
She sketched this face on February 12, 2001, more than 22 years ago.
I can see by these lines that I remember crying.
Gibson says she wanted nothing more than to help get a violent rapist off the street.
I wanted it to work so bad.
She waited, praying for an arrest. Days turned into months, and months turned into years.
This was the longest, my goodness.
Before long, more than 2 decades had gone by, the case had gone cold.
Waiting 22 years for this horrible monster to be caught, that's a lot.
But earlier this month, the now retired Gibson got a message that was hard to believe.
Out of the blue, 22 years later, I get a text saying they caught this guy.
In that text from one of the investigators, this 2001 photo of the man who had now finally been arrested for the brutal sex assault in Walker County. She says the similarities to her now decades-old sketch are uncanny.
It's pretty good. The mouth is almost perfect. The hair is almost perfect. I really do know that this is the man.
So do investigators. Huntsville PD arrested Patrick Darrell Smith Christmas Eve last year. He was indicted on aggravated sex assault charges. Court records point to DNA evidence linking him to the violent rape. 29 years old at the time of the alleged crime, Smith is now 51 years old.
It's really awful not knowing and waiting this long.
For Gibson, closure in a case and hopefully overdue justice for a survivor who lived a nightmare.
I know my witnesses, one of the things is they have trouble sleeping. God bless her. Now she for sure, she's going to sleep good now that he's caught.
Gibson says she expects to testify should this go to trial. As for Smith, he was released on a $250,000 bond and is due back in court October 26th. A tiny Texas town, population 250, has 50 sworn officers on its force. 50. That breaks down to 1 cop for every 5 residents in Coffee City, a community about 3 hours north of Houston. Jeremy Rogalski discovered many of those officers have a history of problems wearing the badge.
On the banks of Lake Palestine, some 3 hours north of Houston, this dot on the map has quite a reputation among those who drive through.
They're everywhere. Literally everywhere.
They run back and forth, back and forth.
A lot of officers policing a very small number of people.
Only 249 people, says the sign on the edge of town. And when you add up all the full-time cops and reserves,
50 officers.
Good Lord, that's crazy.
If it's such a small town, why do we need so many? Makes no sense. Why do you need that many officers?
Coffee City hauled in $1 million in court fines last year for more than 5,000 violations officers wrote, the most in the state for a town its size.
But this isn't a story about a small town writing a bunch of tickets. You see, Coffee City is a magnet for troubled cops.
How do we know? KHOU 11 Investigates obtained personnel records from other police agencies and found more than half of Coffee City officers had been suspended, demoted, terminated, or dishonorably discharged from their previous jobs. A dozen were even criminally charged.
I was astounded to think that they've been hired by another agency.
Greg Freeman is a Sam Houston State criminal justice professor and retired Houston police captain.
I've never seen anything like that in my professional career, and I've seen a lot.
Their prior discipline ranges from excessive force to public drunkenness, untruthfulness, and association with known criminals. Criminal charges include DWI, theft, aggravated assault, family violence, and endangering a child.
If you knowingly are hiring an officer that has a very troubled past and history and has no business to be wearing a uniform, and it's a very, very precarious slope that city is engaging in by hiring.
This is the man who hired them. Chief John J. Portillo quadrupled the department's size since he took the job 2 years ago. He says to provide 24/7 coverage for the town.
Why would you hire so many people with all these red flags?
There's more to just what's on paper. And that's where I rely on my captain and my background investigators to go in and dig and say, hey, what's the truth behind this?
The chief says criminal charges were often dismissed, dishonorable discharges overturned. He claims most applicants hired got on the wrong side of agency politics.
If you go back to the totality of a lot of these officers' stuff, I would say 75%, or not more, they're being retaliated against from their agency.
Retaliate? Mm-hmm. Why would you take a chance, Chief?
I try to look at the good in everybody, and I believe everybody deserves an opportunity.
You give a lot of opportunities.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
The opportunity to wear a badge allows his officers to work extra jobs, which can mean real money, $50 an hour or more.
I mean, let's not hide it from anybody. They're making probably about $80,000 to $100,000 a year doing that.
This was one part in a 3-part series on the officers in Coffee City. You can watch parts 2 and 3 by visiting khou.com/investigations. A fast-moving wildfire near Cleveland forced people from their homes on Tuesday. Even as fire crews got it under control, they warned the danger wasn't over. Matt Doherty reported from near the fire lines.
Helicopters made trip after trip this afternoon, dunking their massive buckets into a nearby pond, then flying the water up over the treetops and dumping it onto the blaze.
There were multiple homes threatened on County Road 325. They were only threatened. No home loss at this time.
Texas A&M Forest Service spokesman Matthew Ford says crews are pretty confident they can keep the fire contained, but they'll need to keep watching it.
We are seeing with the dry conditions that there's been a lot of reburn activity in terms of leaves falling days after the trees have been stressed out, causing a little bit of a flare-up.
Luckily, nobody has been hurt in the fire, and officials say other than burning through pastures and trees, there's been no property loss. Some out here tried to stay ahead of the fire, corralling cattle, driving them away from the oncoming smoke. As the sun began to set, the blanket of smoke continued to spread to nearby properties. Although the flames can't be seen, it's clear the fire is continuing to burn.
In addition to that fire near Cleveland, there was a significant grass fire in Waller County Tuesday as well. Fire crews say wind added fuel to the fire burning through dry brush. Tuesday, prosecutors upgraded charges against a Postal Service worker accused of stealing nearly $250,000 from people along her route. Michelle Choi spoke to one of the victims in the case.
That's her. And that's what she was wearing.
Caught on camera, this is the moment Amy Graves says her mail containing credit cards she was sending back to her bank in December of 2021 were taken allegedly by Ashley Humphrey Williams, a U.S. postal worker at the time, according to prosecutors. She says days later, Precinct 1 investigators told her Williams was caught on cam yet again, this time allegedly using the stolen cards.
And he asked me to describe my mail lady, and I described her to him, and he said, well, we've got her. We've got her on video. She was using y'all's credit cards at those two stores there in Humble.
Amy is one of more than 50 alleged victims prosecutors say targeted by the 37-year-old Williams.
Ashley, is there anything you'd like to say about the charges that you're facing?
Who ignored her question as she walked into court this morning. Williams has been out on bond since March, but she was taken back into custody Tuesday after prosecutors say her charges were upgraded. Previously charged with mail theft, a third-degree felony, prosecutors told us their investigation revealed there was a lot more to this case.
We began to realize the extent of the fraud was a lot greater than we realized.
She's now facing 3 new charges, including fraudulent use of identifying information, a first-degree felony, accused of stealing nearly $250,000 in checks from people's mailboxes between 2019 to 2022. Majority of it, prosecutors say, on her route in the 77009 zip code, or the Woodland Heights area.
And it was discovered that over $220,000 in checks that were destined for businesses in that zip code had been stolen and wound up in the bank account of this defendant.
Prosecutors say over $150,000 of that were checks bound for nonprofits and churches.
She stole stimulus checks during COVID. She stole credit cards. She stole gift cards.
Amy says in total, Williams racked up more than $2,500 on her cards.
It's just hard to believe that somebody could do that to anyone, especially if you're a federal employee delivering mail. We trust you to deliver the mail and not steal.
And while the money was eventually refunded, nearly 2 years later, she says she's still wary of sending and receiving important mail.
I really don't trust that it's going to make it to the destination. It really has caused me to mistrust a lot of the postal system.
She now hopes justice is served for all the victims involved.
She needs to learn that she can't do this to people again.
Houston ISD teachers say they're not happy with some of the changes mandated by state-appointed leadership in the district. They told Anieli Ruiz they're concerned about their safety and classroom disruptions.
Day 2 for HISD, and teachers are already feeling stressed.
More than half of the educators have checked out already.
Middle school history teacher Rebecca Williams says it's a combination of issues. The first concern, the district's new open-door classroom policy. Many teachers feel exposed.
HISD is a national target now. Everybody knows that doors are not closed at school. So you've made us an open target. People can walk in and start shooting no matter what quote unquote measures you've taken.
The district says open doors make it easier for administrators to pop in and provide coaching. But teachers I spoke with say the constant traffic is already disruptive. Union President Jackie Anderson says, why interrupt class to coach when the district is already micromanaging lesson plans?
The appraisers are able to come into the classroom, and in the middle of you reading your script, they can just take over. So I'm not understanding why that's necessary if you are only reading the script that has been provided to you.
Another complaint tonight, teachers say they're being asked to stop every 4 minutes to assess their students.
We need to have authentic engagement. As a teacher, we do. Just naturally, when we have conversations, we stop and engage people. That's how the flow is supposed to go in a classroom. But to mechanically stop every 4 minutes, it makes no sense.
In the end, these teachers say the creativity has been sucked out of their profession and are frustrated with how the year has started.
This is not sustainable, and in the end, the kids are going to lose out.
Another big complaint, according to the teachers union, pay discrepancies between what teachers say they were promised and what they're actually getting in their paychecks. Superintendent Mike Biles says that was a mistake and it will be corrected. Students in Katy spent Wednesday afternoon protesting the district's new gender identity measures. The school board passed the new policy at a packed meeting on Monday night. Jason Miles learned what message protesters hoped to send.
Thank you all for coming, though.
2 days after some of them spoke up at Katy ISD's board meeting, students and others speaking out once again.
I'm just glad that people were able to come out and support this and stand up for what they believe in.
I'm supporting these children because I have a transgender daughter myself. Fortunately, she graduated before this new policy was voted on and approved.
The Board of Trustees passed a new gender identity-related policy Monday night following an hours-long meeting.
The motion carries 4-3.
The policy requires, among other things, that students use restrooms that align with their sex at birth, with some exceptions. An issue Board President Victor Perez admits isn't necessarily problematic in Katy.
This is a policy that's kind of like trying to get ahead of it, if you will.
The new policy also requires district employees to inform parents if a student asks to be identified as transgender, to change their name, or use different pronouns at school.
Do you think most Katy ISD families support what was passed?
I think they do.
Perez says it's mostly meant to make sure staff does not initiate such conversations before students do.
But if someone does decide that they have taken that step to out themselves, so to speak, and go public and have asked to be identified as transgender, or have asked to change their name or their pronoun, etc., then the parents should know.
Won't disappear.
These students say parents don't always understand, and school may be the safest place for needed guidance, including for some of them.
Even if it doesn't get reversed and they decide to stand in their opinions, they'll know that we were fighting and that we tried.
The vast majority of those who spoke Monday night were against the measure, although some parents did tell us they agree with the move. It's possible the issue could end up in court. You called, we listened. A North Houston business reached out to KHOU 11 after a huge water main break flooded the street for a month. Ugochi Aloka shared what happened after we reached out to the city.
Employees here at Cummins off the North Loop feeder road were ecstatic when they saw Houston Public Works roll up here earlier today to fix the leak you see behind me. Now they say their cries for help fell on deaf ears for nearly a month.
It basically was a flood. Trucks would pass by, the water is shooting up 3 feet high.
Workers from Cummins, a diesel engine repair company, gathered around Wednesday morning to see just how bad the water leak developed. Constant flooding plagued this street, neighboring their business, and they didn't want any drivers to get hurt. So they set up cones to help block the area.
They had to put up crates to try to get the water from out of the streets.
Let's go back 3 weeks ago. Around August 5th, an employee says he reached out to the Houston Public Works Department when the water main first broke, and says he was told basically it wasn't a priority at the time to resolve.
Do they not deem this as an emergency situation? Which he responded that they do not. And then I had my sales manager just Monday contact the city of Houston again.
But one of the Cummins supervisors wasn't satisfied with the city's answer. So she emailed us, explaining the close calls that startled her, tied to the water leak.
The reason I reached out to KHOU is because I have witnessed several near-miss accidents. And then yesterday, myself, almost had an accident.
So glad that wasn't the case for her. Crews showed up to start working on the broken water main around 8 a.m. this morning, after our first report aired. Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner says because of drought conditions, the ground is so dry, which is causing pipes to break. The city does have 6 contractors currently working to address water leaks throughout the city, but they plan to add 6 more teams to help Houston Public Works. Reporting in North Houston, Ugochi Iloka, KHOU 11 News.
Do you have a story you want us to look into? It is as easy as emailing us. Send us the details to newstips@khou.com. Fresh off her historic 8th U.S. gymnastics title, Simone Biles made a stop back in town. She visited the Woodlands to unveil her latest collection with Athleta. Jason Bristol caught up with the Olympic gold medalist.
The big takeaway for me is that Simone right now seems to be in a good place. And not just because she won. Her life is different now. She's married, she has her business interests, and of course, training for what's next, which is the World Championships. Simone in the Woodlands promoting her new activewear line for girls. The message on each piece, because I can. Something she once said during an interview when asked about pushing boundaries. Simone telling me she's a little tired after taking a red-eye Tuesday morning from the U.S. Championships in San Jose, California. But her confidence is where it needs to be.
I'm actually feeling really good, confident going into the year because I think before I was competing at Classics, I had a little bit of self-doubt, especially after coming off of Tokyo and everything that happened. So now I'm kind of getting back into the groove of things. Hopefully I can carry that confidence into World Trials and hopefully Worlds later in the year.
And her time away from gymnastics after those Olympics was about, quote, getting healthy again mentally and physically. And now she knows there's more to life than just gymnastics. And speaking of that, she was very happy her husband, Jonathan Owens, former Texan, made the Green Bay Packers 53-man roster. And yes, it makes her feel old when people mention this most recent title comes 10 years after her first.
A new law that was supposed to go into effect Friday didn't after a federal judge issued a temporary restraining order for SB 12. The ACLU called the ruling a small step in the right direction. Devon Roming talked to those who are fighting to get the law off the books and know the fight is far from over.
The artistic expression of drag performance will live to see another day in Texas, at least for now, with a temporary restraining order granted Thursday blocking Senate Bill 12.
It was a really important and necessary win today.
The bill, set to become law tomorrow, would ban any sexually oriented performances outlined as a male exhibiting as a female or vice versa from performing in public spaces with children under the age of 18. Violators could face up to $10,000 in fines and a year in jail. Critics say while the law was written broadly,
it could apply to Broadway musicals, to professional wrestling.
They believe it would have an outsized impact on the LGBTQ+ community. Brian Clostabor is an attorney with the American Civil Liberties Union of Texas, representing two small businesses, drag performers, and local pride groups in a lawsuit filed against the state earlier this month.
We are grateful that the court listened carefully to them, heard them, and recognized the importance of this.
Considering for some, the artistic expression is more than just glitz and glam.
Drag is my livelihood. It's everything I do. It's how I make my income. It's how I put food on the table for myself.
We ask our lawmakers to focus on real problems facing Texans, not just to pass discriminatory and cruel legislation.
The judge in this case gave both sides until next Wednesday to submit final briefings. We expect his ruling in just about a month. Some local college students are trying to find a place to live after a brand new apartment complex delayed their move-in twice. Students and parents reached out to KHOU 11 frustrated by the delays. Adam Bennett showed us why managers say it's happening.
Move-in was originally supposed to be August 19th, then today. Now it's been pushed to September the 7th. You can see behind me, construction continues at this brand new apartment complex. Parents and students are frustrated by the situation and that they were told only 1 or 2 days out they need to go somewhere else. It's the second week of classes at the University of Houston and the second delayed move-in date for future residents at this apartment complex across the street.
It's stressful, honestly.
junior Afoma Annie was set to live at the Haven at Elgin Apartments. Now she's staying with family in Richmond.
I have friends from Dallas, San Antonio, Galveston who can't even be on campus.
Angelina Gordon's daughter, sophomore Dominique Jordan, stayed at a hotel on campus, then with a friend. Now she's with her mom in Galveston.
It has totally stressed her out.
They're trying to figure out where Jordan will stay next week. She says she can't get out of the lease.
We try and ask questions that are reasonable, that are fair questions, and we just don't seem to get a reasonable answer.
A manager on site told me they're working tirelessly to do right by the residents, but then referred all of their comment to Greystar's media line. A resident shared this email sent yesterday by management saying they've begun furniture installation and are scheduling several final inspections over the next week. It also offered more compensation on top of the previous 2-month rent credit or $500 a week offer. Late this afternoon, we saw what appeared to be city inspectors on site. Adam Bennett, KHOU 11 News.
Some of the most popular beaches in Texas have a nasty problem: fecal bacteria. KHOU 11 Investigates analyzed data from the Texas General Land Office and found 91% of the state's beaches tested positive for potentially unsafe levels of fecal contamination just so far this year. That is nearly double the national average. Investigative reporter Cheryl Mercedes visited Galveston, where every beach, more than 20 of them, made the list.
The sun, the surf, the sand. In Texas, you don't have to travel far to find it.
We just enjoy staring out at the ocean, the peacefulness. Been coming down for a lot of years.
We relax and talk. Yeah, with friends. Every once in a while she'll come play in the sand, but she loves the water.
But some days, what's in the water could make swimmers sick. John Burns with Texas Beach Watch is tasked with collecting water samples along Galveston beaches.
The people who analyze all this data, they use that to help make determinations as to what may or may not be causing the high bacteria.
Burns says the bacteria typically comes from human and animal waste and sewage system overflows. Swimming in contaminated water can cause diarrhea and bacterial infections. A KHOU 11 analysis of Texas General Land Office data found 57 of 62 Texas beaches saw at least one potentially unsafe test day this year where fecal contamination was above the EPA's conservative beach action value. Here in Greater Houston, the worst offenders were Palacios, where the samples tested above the EPA threshold nearly half the days, followed by Texas City Dike, Sylvan Beach Park, Port Bolivar, and tied for 5th, Quintana and Galveston Seawall at 61st Street, where we caught up with beachgoers.
It's scary because you don't really know what there could be.
Beachgoers are warned about water quality. If you see an orange flag or sign, bacteria is high. However, Texas's threshold is higher than the EPA's. So even on days when there isn't a flag flying, fecal levels may be potentially unsafe.
I wish somebody would do something about it.
Environment America is a research and policy group that tracks water safety and put out a swimming report for 2022. They found in Texas, 90% of Texas beaches had potentially unsafe fecal levels, about the same as this year. Executive Director Luke Metzger.
Well, it says that we still have a serious problem with water quality in our beaches, and it's unacceptable.
A new federal law passed in 2021 provided money to clean up beaches, but Metzger says it is not enough.
The bipartisan infrastructure law that just passed Congress a couple of years ago made a historic investment in our clean water infrastructure to start to address this problem in a serious way. Unfortunately, still just a fraction of what's needed.
For now, these beachgoers say they are going to be more mindful of environmental warnings.
You've raised our awareness, but we just dip in to cool off, so I'm not scuba diving in it just yet.
The only beaches in Texas that didn't test positive for fecal bacteria were on South Padre Island. You can see the latest testing results along the Texas coast right now on KHOU.com.
Just look for this article at khou.com/investigations. For this week's Hidden Gem, we're traveling to Rosenberg, where a museum celebrates the industry that built Fort Bend County: railroads.
We're at the Rosenberg Railroad Museum. For so long, people traveled, by horse and buggy or by boat, but really to develop the United States, it took railroads to get people where they needed to go. We like to preserve that history and tell the story of how it's impacted us today.
On its 2 acres, right alongside 4 very active railroad tracks, the museum uses a variety of spaces to bring that history to life.
We have 2 large buildings, a gallery building and an education station that houses our model train exhibit.
7 layouts, each with different gauges of train and very different landscapes. But the largest track is outside.
It has what we call a G gauge or G scale model train on it, and it is a depiction of Fort Bend County in the 1950s.
The garden track is connected to the gallery building.
The gallery building is really the story and the history of railroading in Fort Bend County. Our staff here are all trained to deliver that history in an educational and fun way and to really relate it to our guests, no matter if they're 2 years old or 65 years old.
Admission includes a tour with a docent who will take you through those buildings as well as to historic Tower 17.
The only surviving rail structure in Rosenberg, Texas,
which was decommissioned in 2003.
It basically controlled the flow of traffic, if you will, on the tracks for 100 years, which is amazing because it has all of the technology from the electro-manual computer, so you're pulling levers to control signals and tracks, to telegraphs, to candlestick phones, to technology in the early 2000s.
The Quebec is one of 2 rail cars that you can tour on site here at the museum. And you really ought to, because none of the video that I will show you will do it justice. You've got to come and see it in person.
It's been restored to its 1920s glamour. It's really neat to see.
And there are so many other interesting stops on the property. You can check out an old bathhouse, the only spot where rail workers could bathe. Take the kids to the Discovery Room to learn and play. Tour this collection of antique speeders used to cart crews along the tracks.
We hope when people visit us, they take away a little bit of information about how railroading has impacted the area, the development of so many areas.
As always, we have more information about when you can visit and admission fees on khou.com/hidden gems. Explore all the hidden gems across the Houston area by going to khou.com/hidden gems. There you'll find more detailed articles about each one, as well as an interactive map. Friday, we got our first look at some of the evidence in the trial of Antonio Armstrong Jr., better known as AJ. Last month, after 2 mistrials, a 3rd jury convicted him of murdering his parents in 2016. Ugochi Aloka took us to the Harris County office that preserves everything.
We're inside a criminal exhibit room where the evidence for the A.J. Armstrong trial is being stored. I spoke to a senior criminal exhibit clerk for the Harris County District Clerk's office. She shares exactly what she does here.
When I bring the exhibits back, I box them. If they're in a box completely by themselves, I put a label on it with the case number and the defendant's name.
Senior Clerk Rhonda Spinks is authorized to provide the Armstrong trial exhibits upon media request. We saw first-hand pictures taken at the crime scene of the Armstrong home in Southwest Houston on July 29, 2016. This includes the gun used to kill Antonio and Don Armstrong, and a note that says, "I'm watching you," left on the kitchen counter. We also saw A.J. Armstrong's shirt with spots of blood the prosecution used as evidence and pictures of carpet burn. This was linked to when A.J., at just 16 years old, allegedly tried to burn the house down a few days before murdering his parents. The court reporter on this case handed over everything to Spinks, who says she doesn't take her role lightly.
We don't sit here going through the stuff, just for funs or giggles, It's preserved for its entirety.
Ugochi Iloka, KHOU 11 News.
Nearly 800 new laws went into effect on Friday. Stephanie Whitfield looked at how some of them will impact your kids at school.
These new laws cover a wide range of issues, from chaplains being allowed at schools to some books with explicit content being banned. But school security is something a lot of parents are worried about. So here are some changes that are in effect today. House Bill 3 requires schools to have armed officers at every campus. Schools can claim an exemption if funding is an issue or if they don't have enough applicants. Another requirement of HB 3, school staff must be trained to identify students who may need mental health support. All classrooms are also required to have silent panic buttons. Harsher penalties for vaping in school also go into effect today. House Bill 114 removes students from the classroom if they're caught vaping on campus. The new law requires immediate disciplinary action. Now, there are several other new laws in effect today that could impact you and your family. So just text the word laws to 713-526-1111 and we'll text you back with links to several articles explaining those laws. Back to you.
To learn more about the other laws that went into effect on September 1st, which address elections, LGBTQ+ rights, crime, drivers, and much more, check out this KHOU 11 Plus special. You can watch it wherever you're watching this. Big changes are coming for anyone with a federal student loan. Starting Friday, interest rates return after being paused for 3 years during the pandemic. Our Grace White is here with what you need to know.
The interest starts today, but you won't have to pay anything until October. For millions of Americans, this could mean tighter pocketbooks this fall.
I think it's going to have a tremendous impact.
James Douglas is a distinguished professor of law at Texas Southern University.
Students are now, rather than graduating from college with $25,000 or $30,000 in loans, they're graduating with $100,000 or $200,000 in loans, and that's a lot of money to pay back.
And Douglas says after the Supreme Court struck down student loan forgiveness this summer, there could be sticker shock this fall.
A lot of people were counting on not having to have to go through and start repaying these loans back.
So grab a pen. Here are some of the most commonly asked questions. When are the first payments due? In October, you will get your bill. It will come 21 days before you have to pay. Can the company handling my loan change? Yes, the company who serviced your loan during the pandemic may not be the same now. Log into your account on the Federal Student Aid website to see. What if I can't pay? There's a new repayment plan called SAVE. The Biden administration estimates it will lower or eliminate monthly loan payments for more than 20 million borrowers. But Douglas says he hopes this will restart the bigger conversation on the cost of higher education.
So that we can produce the kind of higher education system so that people won't have to go terribly in debt in order to pursue a higher education experience.
As these payments start back up, so will the scams. The government warning consumers to keep their guard up this fall. And remember, many debt relief companies charge services you can take care of yourself for free. Grace White, KHOU 11 News.
Hope that helped you catch up on this past week and you're ready for the next one. Remember, you can tune into KHOU 11 on air, online via KHOU.com and YouTube, as well as by using our free KHOU 11 Plus app on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. Have a great week.